So I was brought up in the church. I remember when I was younger, my mum used to literally force me and my siblings to go to church. I don't really remember my mum being there. I know she did sometimes, but it was mainly us, the children, that were forced to go every Sunday. We'd go Sunday school and stay for Sunday services and get dropped back home. And I didn't mind it as a child, but when I reached my teens, I started to grow less interested in it. You know, I kind of felt like I was able to relate to what was being taught. I had no interest in learning what they were teaching. So when I was 14, I remember going to my mum and telling her that I just don't want to go to church anymore. I just feel like it's a waste of my time. I'm not getting anything from it. So she agreed that I didn't have to go anymore. So then I remember just, being like a normal teenager, wanting to hang out with my friends after school, on the weekends. We'd go to youth club, and I started to experiment with cannabis. And I hid this from my mum really well, even though part of me feels like, how on earth did she not know? Because I remember times coming home from youth club with my sister after smoking and being paranoid that she would smell it on us, but she never, ever, ever questioned what that smell was. So going up to 16 now, I remember going back to church because we was invited there for my cousin's baptism, and she was getting baptized. She was the same age as me, 16, and there was probably about 7 or 8 other young people who were going to get baptized that same night. And I remember being sat in church and just being amazed at how excited these young people were about God. And that's something that I'd never seen before. All my time being in church, growing up in church, I'd never seen so many young people that were so excited about God and wanting to devote their lives to him. So I'm sat there in this church now, and the church is packed. I remember there's a downstairs area and a balcony upstairs, and I was sat upstairs, but I couldn't sit next to my sister or my mum because there wasn't enough seats for us to sit together. So I was upstairs, my mum and sister were downstairs, and the baptism's going on, and I'm really, feeling it and just enjoying the whole service. And I remember just feeling this presence at one point, and I didn't understand back then it was the presence of God. And I remember just feeling like, I think I want to come back to church. I've never felt this presence before, and it was making me feel like I actually want to come back to church. So I remember thinking also that I hope that my sister feels like this, because I don't want to come back on my own. So I was hoping that she was feeling what I was feeling also. And luckily enough, after we found each other after the service, and I said, I want to see if we can come back. I want, the Brother Williams, that was his name, the one who used to pick us up to go to church when we was younger. I'm going to ask if Brother Williams can pick us up to go to church again. And she said she was thinking the same thing, that she had this feeling, the same feeling that I was experiencing, was making her want to come back to church. So we both arranged for Brother Williams to come and pick us up the following Sunday. And that's when we both started to come back to church. And a few weeks after that was when I gave my heart to Christ. I made a conscious decision that I was going to follow Jesus, come to church and just be devoted, living my life for him. And I remember going back home that night and I threw away my cigarettes. I said, I'm not going to smoke no more. I'm not going to drink no more. I'm just trying to better myself for Jesus. And I remember being so excited about this transformation that I'd felt taking place on the inside, that when I went to school, I would tell my friends about God and would invite them to come to church. And, I was very vocal and very zealous. I was zealous for God. I was zealous. And so, my life then just started to change, I felt Jesus more personally. It wasn't about this big God up in the sky who's pointing his finger down at me and not being happy with how I'm living. It was more personal. I accepted Jesus into my heart, accepted the sacrifice that he had made for my sins, and it just became a bit more personal, rather than having someone at the pulpit telling me about this God. It was just more personal. So anyway, moving forward into my 20s, well, first of all, I was quite active in the church as well. It didn't take me long to actually join the worship team and work in the youth department and with the children's department as well. So I was quite active in the church. But moving forward into my 20s, I went away to Wolverhampton to university to study. And I wasn't as committed as I was back home. So I just kind of felt like, oh, I got a bit of freedom now. I'm out of my mum's house. I've got nobody, you know, watching over me. I'm just kind of left to my own devices. And even though I was going to a church in Wolverhampton, and I did join the Christian Union and form some beautiful relationships with some believers. However, that was when I also entered into my first serious relationship. And that's when I felt like I started to compromise my standards, because although this other guy was a Christian, he was more experienced. He was 11 years older than me, experienced a lot more in life than I had. And he was kind of more an open-minded Christian, if that makes any sense. He wasn't he wasn't practicing the Bible or the teachings of Jesus, shall I say. He wasn't really practicing the teachings of Jesus. So, you know, his standards became my standards, and I compromised a lot. And it made me really question whether I was still a Christian, made me question whether God still loved me. I just had a lot of doubts, you know, a lot of doubt. Anyway, fast forward, I moved back to Gloucester. Went back to the church that I was brought up in. And I just became a bit more active in the church again. And then a couple of years later, I'm married. I've got a baby. Suffering from postnatal depression, which I did not know at the time. I didn't know that it was postnatal, but it's only when I look back now I can say, yeah, that definitely was undiagnosed postnatal depression. And I was on antidepressants at the time as well, actually. And I wasn't going to church as much because of other things that had happened, which I won't talk about just yet. So I'm not going to church that much anymore. I've got a baby, I've got a husband. I'm drinking alcohol, I'm smoking weed, and I'm on antidepressants, 100 milligram of antidepressants. So it's not a lot, it's not a good combination. There's a lot of drugs in my body, alcohol in my system, affecting my mind, affecting my hormones, affecting my behavior. And I did a lot of things that really compromised relationships. So I'm less devoted to Jesus. I'm not really interested in the church anymore. I'm questioning certain things in the Bible. And then I started to take an interest in crystals, you know, even though I was a little bit dubious at them before. But then someone who's dear to me was not, I won't say dabbling in them, but they was making jewelry, which I was fascinated by, crystal jewelry. And I loved the look of them. I loved how they felt in my hand, the energy. And I was thinking, oh, this is beautiful. It's good energy. Wow. And so I started to just be less rigid about God. I was less, you know, my mindset as a Christian was there's only one way to heaven. And if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. Whereas where I was in my 20s, after I'd got married and had a baby, shortly after that, I became more open-minded. And I thought, well, you know, this is good energy. The people who are into these things are all about love and light. So how can it be bad? So I started to go down that road, which a lot of people would call the New Age spirituality. Even though I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I just thought, oh, it's good energy. It's making me feel good. It's helping me in some way, you know, mentally. And I still feel connected to God. So I thought, this is all right. You know, there's nothing wrong with this. Anyway, fast forward now. We're in 2018 and it's August. We've just entered into August. And I decided to go on a fast. I really felt inspired to go on this fast, actually. It's not just something I feel just, oh, I'm just going to fast. I just felt very inspired and led naturally to go into fast. I was a vegan now for a good few months. I'd lost a lot of weight. My skin was clear, which I'd always struggled with, what do you call them? Oh my God, my head's gone blank. I'd struggled with blemishes, skin blemishes. So I noticed when I became vegan, I lost weight, my skin became clear, I was feeling lighter, my energy was more vibrant. I thought, yes, okay, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna go on a fast. I'm gonna fast for 7 days. I'm not gonna eat any processed foods. I'm just gonna have greens, green vegetables and fruit, just strictly green. And a lot of weed. So I was smoking a lot of weed. During the 7 days, a lot of weed, probably smoking more than what I was eating, actually, I must say. So we get to day 7 now, and Jess is just like light as a feather, feeling so clear, feeling good vibes, you know, I'm loving the world, there's no wrong here, everything's just good. Up until I'm sat in my garden, enjoying a spliff, admiring the stars. The stars are just looking amazing and just so clear and so bright. And I feel like they're communicating something to me. And I remember seeing Orion's belt, the 3 stars that kind of align together. And I remember hearing a song saying, 3, that's a magic number. Yes, it is. It's a magic number. Was I'm looking up at these stars and I'm like, wow, they're trying to communicate to me. 3 is the magic number. 3. Just feeling fascinated. And I'm just enjoying that spliff. Bear in mind, my 2 girls were in the living room. I'm outside in the garden. And then all of a sudden, I just feel this energy just come upon me. And I jumped out of the chair. I felt like it was a good energy because I just felt like I'd won the lottery. Something good, amazing had just happened. And I just shoot up out of my chair. I run in through the back door, through to the kitchen, past my girls who were in the living room playing. And I go out the front door outside onto the street, okay? As I go to my front door though, I hear a voice say, don't worry about your girls, they're gonna be fine. So I'm just out there in the street, feeling like I've just won the lottery, this excitement inside. And I run across the road to my neighbor. And I know my neighbor, but I don't know him enough to just let myself in his house. I open up the door's unlocked, and I go through into this house, and he must have had an event, a family event, a gathering or something, because there was some family members there that don't live there. And I remember sitting down and I'm talking to his nan like I've met her before. I've never met her in my life, but I don't even know what I'm saying. To this day, I cannot tell you what I was talking about. Then I go upstairs into my neighbor's room. He was playing some music and I'm talking to him. I still don't even know what I was saying. But thank God his mum knew. She realised that I was there. So that means if I'm there, who's watching the girls? So she goes over and goes to see the girls, make sure they're all right. Anyway, so the things that I'm saying right now, I know that there's other things that took place in between. But you see, I have some memory loss. I know there's things that I don't even remember. My memory's totally wiped out of those events that took place. But the things that I do remember, I remember coming back at the house and lying down on the pavement and looking up at the stars and being fascinated again and just feeling like the stars are talking to me. What are they saying? They're communicating something to me. And I'm just there on the pavement, on the road outside. And by now there's some people that have come out from their home onto the street. Then I remember getting up. It might not have been in this order. I might have done this, what I'm about to tell you now. I might have done that first. But I just remember feeling like I've got some power and I want to display my power for everyone to see. So I said to people that are outside with me, look, and I run up the wall. In my mind, I'm running up the wall like I'm Catwoman, yeah, on all fours, right? Up the wall. I don't know what it looked like. I wish I could see what it looked like, what it actually looked like. But in my mind, I'm like a cat just going up this wall. And then I start to feel like I'm Spider-Man. So then I say again, watch. And I jump up on a car bonnet. I didn't realize it was my sister, because my neighbor must have called my sister and said, look, your sister's going on like a mad woman. Come down here now. So I didn't realize at the time that she said, Jess, it was my car. When I told her what I was doing, she said, yeah, it was my car. So she saw me. She actually saw me. And she said she saw how I pounced upon the car. And I felt like I was Spider-Man. It was just perfect, you know? And then I remember her dragging me inside. Just come on, inside. What's going on? And when I get inside now, I remember my mum being there. And she gave me one on that side of my face and then back on the other side of my face. And she was like telling me, snap out of it. What's wrong with you? And I remember after she done that, I was like, what did you do that for? But you know what? I didn't feel any pain. That's what was so, because I know she put some force into them 2 boxes, you know, but I didn't feel nothing. Anyway, I remember going back in the garden now with my sister, and she's just like asking me, what's going on? What's wrong? And I said, nothing. What's wrong? Like, I feel so good. Like, what's wrong with everybody else? More like, I thought everybody else had gone crazy and that was just normal, you know. But hey, you know, after a couple of hours, I'd come back down and I was back here on earth. And thankfully, my mum stayed over with me that night, because it was only me and the girls that were living there at the time. So she stayed over to make sure everything was all right. And yeah, the next morning I was just back to normal. I was just like, maybe I just smoked too much weed, you know. I was just, I don't know what happened. I was just too high. But the police came round. That night I actually ended up in the back of a police van trying to help me, but they tried to kill me. I became aggressive. I was throwing stones at them and swearing at them and telling them that I'm going to banish them. And, I just remember being in that waiting room and I was shouting at the police officer, the one who I just felt was a bad cop.